Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Daniello Institute for Veterans and Military Families. This is an Alumni Services VetNet webinar, and we're thrilled to have quite a few participants here today joining us from all around the country for what promises to be an enlightening experience. Today, we have the privilege of hosting a distinguished guest, the head military and Veterans Affairs Specialty Strategies at Johnson & Johnson, Ms. Tiffany Doughty. Tiffany brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, combining a rich military background with innovative HR practices and strategies at J&J. In today's session, Tiffany and her team will be talking about launching a career at J&J, and we will delve into how the integration of military skills and corporate roles kind of helps to create a dynamic work environment for veteran-affiliated talent. After the presentation, we'll have a quick Q&A session where Tiffany and her team will answer your questions. So please, at this time, feel free to submit your questions at any time during the presentation. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Johnson & Johnson featuring Tiffany Doughty and team. Tiffany, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kenneth and Cassandra and team. We are just thrilled to be here. Always thrilled to partner with the IBMF as longtime sponsors and partners of all of your employment programming as well as entrepreneurship programming. But yeah, excited to meet all of you who have joined. I know there's about 35 people in the room now, and interested in hearing about Johnson & Johnson and careers in our industries. So without further ado, what we're going to do today is we'll spend a bit of time just level setting about, if we go to the next slide, just level setting a little bit about who your speakers are today, who our company is, grounding you in that and in our values, our history with the military community. You're going to hear from some of our Johnson, this is a little out of order, sorry, what we ended up going with. You're going to hear from some of our veterans at Johnson & Johnson. I'll introduce you to them here shortly. And then we're going to take your questions. So I want to tee that up today or now to start thinking about your questions. As we tell you about our pathways, we're going to then want to hear from you and hear how we can help you to navigate what's next for you. So next slide. All right, so here's everyone you are going to hear from today. I keep thinking I need a new headshot with the short hair, but anyway, that's another topic. But you are going to hear from folks who are across our industry. Really wanted to bring you a diversity of that today. Lauren, who is a senior financial analyst, Aaron, who is our senior director for our Depew Synthes capital and digital sales business, and Joe Frederick, who's a PAH territory manager in sales. So really diversity of what these careers are. And one thing you might have just noticed is none of us are in clinical careers. That's interesting when you think about a healthcare company, or maybe you don't even think of us as a healthcare company. Then grateful to tell you have a chance to tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do. Next slide. But first and foremost, what are we looking for? And by the way, this slide was not created for a military audience. We are looking for brilliant minds that see the world differently. We are trying to change the future of health for humanity and get after the leading causes of mortality around the world. We know that it takes innovation and it takes new minds to help us to tackle that. So that's why we're here. That's what we recruit for above all else. Next. And then if I tell you nothing else about our company, and I know I haven't gotten into what we do, but actually much more important is that sort of who we are, just like you as a person, who you are is more a little comes before what you do because it informs everything that you do. For us, just like when I was in the Army, I had my Army core values. What defines how we make decisions, how we work, what each and every one of us do day to day at Johnson & Johnson is our credo. And I mean it. I keep it in front of me here at my desk at home. I really do mean it and reference it very often. But that is the set of values that we live by. And it really seems to resonate to our veterans who come to work and who stay, who retain our veterans retain and our military spouses retain at amazing rates, meaning they stay once they come to J&J. So what's our credo? Well, our credo was written in 1943, which I always find that phenomenal if you think about what was happening in the context of the world and the Industrial Revolution, that a company was thinking this progressively. It's studied in a lot of MBA programs, but written in 1943 by Robert Wood Johnson. By the way, after he had served as an appointed general in the military, he then came home and wrote this credo. So I think there's a little influence there. It is a 4-paragraph statement. That is a whole lot of words. But what it does is each paragraph defines a stakeholder audience, and it is meant to be in the order in which we must consider these people in every decision that we make. So the first paragraph gets into patients, their doctors and nurses, their mothers and fathers. So the end users who are getting our products, putting our products in their body, or using our products to save lives. They are the first thing that we must consider in everything that we do. Second, and again, 1943, we've changed some of the language, the sentiment has really not changed. The second group of people we must consider are our employees. So right after patients are our employees. And that's the longest paragraph you'll see there, that second paragraph. And it gets into a lot of must statements, which I love. And it says, compensation must be fair and adequate, and working conditions must be clean, and employees must be safe. But here's one that I love. We must support the health and well-being of our employees and help them fulfill our family and other personal responsibilities. What I love about that is it is must statements, and it defines how we lead, it defines how we treat our people. Third, it's the communities in which we do business. So how do we treat our communities? And this comes into play when we are thinking about supporting veteran charities, right? And military family charities. That's a community in which we operate. But it also goes into, how are we good citizens in every area where we do business around the world, and in New Jersey and here in Florida? How do we support our communities? And then last is our shareholders. So yes, we need to make a profit to support our shareholders, but it never comes before those other entities. So we spend a lot of time on that. That's the most important thing. But next slide. All right, but how big are we? We are about 150,000 employees today in 60 countries, over 250 operating companies. We are big, we are dispersed. How we say that is we are the world's most diversified healthcare company. Next slide. And we are made up of 2 sectors. So if you're confused by this and you're not seeing what you thought of as Johnson & Johnson, we have completely split off our consumer business. So the Band-Aids, the Listerine, maybe you didn't think of those as J&J, maybe you did. The Johnson's baby products, those are now a company called Kenvue as of 2023. And we are really focused on our 2 core businesses, which, by the way, were already our largest businesses. Pharmaceutical innovations, and med tech. Pharmaceutical, a little bit self-explanatory, but that is everything from our really advanced CAR-T cancer treatments to, we've had vaccines, but to Xarelto, Stelara, some of these names you may have heard. MedTech, though, you may be less familiar. That is everything from here in Jacksonville. We make AccuView contact lenses, all the way to knee replacements, to robotic heart surgery equipment. Those are all MedTech medical devices. What we call MedTech. Next slide. All right. And yes, we mentioned this already. Go to the next slide. We have split off our consumer business to focus on our core areas. What are we looking for? And this is where I'm going to be turning it over in a minute. But this slide, I must point out, this one was not made for a military audience. This is a general recruiting slide. When any recruiter goes out to an event, or a team member gives an information session, this is one of the slides I decided to keep, because I can't imagine a better audience than military. That we said the 3 skills that are most important to succeed in our business are curiosity, emotional intelligence, and resilience. And joke I used to always make about the military audience is we think that people who are in the military are rigid. And I know we're talking to spouses as well today, but this example is those who are in the military, is that we think that we're rigid. And yes, we understand that there's step 1 through 10 for a reason, but if we get to step 10 and it's broken, we're going to fix it, figure it out, put some duct tape on it, and keep the mission rolling, right? That to me is that resilience, that emotional intelligence, and the curiosity to figure out how do we get things done in the best and most innovative ways. And so, I didn't share much about me, but I'm going to turn it over to our team in just a moment. But I am proud to be here. By the way, head of military affairs at Johnson & Johnson. I was an E4, Army enlisted. I came up in a Navy enlisted household. Lots of diverse backgrounds are thriving at Johnson & Johnson. On that note, we'll move to the next slide. I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Joe Frederick, to talk to us about our military connection.
Yeah, thanks, Tiffany. Joe Frederick. I'm a territory manager in Chicago. I'll go a little bit more about my background here in a minute. But first of all, I want to talk about Johnson & Johnson's military connection to the community. You know, a lot of companies talk about how much they love vets. Our commitment to the military goes back to 1892 during the Spanish-American War, when we were giving leave for those Johnson & Johnson employees who went to go fight that war. So think about that, 1892. So we have a legacy of support and engagement. You know, award-winning, best in class. A lot of people will talk about that. As you can see, the VLC, that's the Veterans Leadership Organization. That's the employee resource group that I had with a partner of mine. But one of the great things that I really love about Johnson & Johnson is we were in the top 10 for Military Times Best for Vets Employers. So, you know, this is a company that really appreciates veterans and goes above and beyond and try to help them get into different roles, sales roles like myself. I mean, we're also a Vets Index, a 5-star employer for 23, and then also military friendly. We were a silver employer. So we walk the walk, and we also talk the talk. And then opportunities to connect, give back. I'm an ACP mentor with Johnson & Johnson. I'm actually on with my second mentee this year. USO, Travis Manning, and Wounded Warrior Project. Those are all things you should be familiar with. And again, we give back, and that's one thing that I really love about working for Johnson & Johnson. So why don't we go to the next slide, and I'll tell you a little bit about my story. All right, so here I am, Joe Frederick. I am a retired Navy commander. I flew P-3s and did a few other things with JSOC for a little time. 20 years in the Navy. I retired 2 years ago, and I was for those of you that are Navy, you know what a plank owner is. I was the first hire through Johnson & Johnson's Veteran Sales Associate Pathways program, a great program that I'm really proud of, have since graduated out of it, and I have my own territory. But it was an opportunity for someone with no sales experience to get into Johnson & Johnson and really learn about what it takes to be in sales, and in particular in pharmaceutical sales. You know, Tiffany talked about curiosity, emotional intelligence, and resilience. Well, in sales, you got to have a lot of resilience because you hear a lot more no's than you do yes. So you look at there, you can see some of the commands that I was with when I was in the Navy. Again, adaptability, strategic thinking, effective communications. Those are all things I still use today when I talk to my doctors, when I work with my teams here in Chicago. I've done neuroscience, schizophrenia, you know, and then right now I'm in pulmonary hypertension. You can see some of those drugs that I've sold. But what's really great about this is, as I was transitioning out, one of my mentors said, if you can answer 3 questions, then you know you found the right place. What do you want to do? Where do you want to live? And who do you want to work for? I knew I was coming back to Chicago when I retired. I grew up here in Chicago. I knew I was going to go into sales. I wasn't sure what kind of sales I was going to, and I didn't know who I was going to work for. And you really want to drill down on that. But it wasn't until I met Brad Ramler, who was my first district manager, had a phone call conversation with him, and I knew within 5 minutes, this is a guy that I could see myself working for. And Johnson & Johnson was a company that I could see myself working for too. So been with the company for 2 years. I decided to dive headlong, and I also like I talked about earlier, I co-run the Veterans Leadership Council for all of North American Pharma, only having been in the company for 2 years. So that's a little bit about me. I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and answering them if I can. So that's me. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. My name's Lauren Porres, and I'll share my background next with you all. So I'm a senior financial analyst with J&J, and I'm actually a current military spouse. So my background's a little bit different than Joe as a military spouse and not a veteran myself. But as a spouse, I think I have several skills that I've learned as a spouse that also help me in the professional world, like adaptability and time management, determination, and even resilience, and trying to, you never know the unpredictability of military orders. So working through those and coming out the other side. So to speak a little bit about my background, I graduated from college at Butler University in Indiana with degrees in finance and accounting, and started right after with a small CPA firm in Indiana and earned my CPA certification. I stayed with that company for quite a few years, and even through our first set of PCS orders. It was during COVID, so we had an easier move. I was already working remote, so I could stay remote. But I felt pretty siloed in the CPA firm. I didn't feel like I had a chance to really broaden my financial background. So I began looking for other opportunities, which is where I found J&J about a year and a half ago. So like Joe, relatively new to J&J, but really excited by all the great things happening. As my first role here, I've become a senior financial analyst with our surgical vision business, so in the medtech area that Tiffany spoke to, and I provide finance support to our supply chain. And one thing that's really exciting to me about growing my finance career at J&J is we have the opportunity to really try a lot of different areas of finance that I can maybe start in supply chain and move through other areas as well. So really grow a well-rounded career that I felt like I was missing out on. And then in addition to that, just the support the military families get from J&J. In the one and a half year time I've been here, we've already had another PCS. So I was able to do that without really impacting my role and my position at all. So it was a very smooth transition, which I really owe to the support that J&J provides all of our military families. So that's a little bit about me. I'm excited to hear more about you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aon Dick, Senior Director of Capital and Digital Sales for DePuy Synthes. For those that don't know, that's anyone that you know that might need hip replacement or shoulder replacement or knee replacement. That's the field of that I work in. It's specifically sales and robotics and digital technology. So a really unique application here at J&J. And that's one of the great things as well as we look at talent. There's so many opportunities to do so many different types of roles and such. As you'll see here shortly, as I review my career pathway back to J&J, I say back because this is actually my second tour of duty. So I always believe once you start in J&J, you never get it out of you. And ultimately for me, it's led me back here. And so let me share a little bit about my pathway. And as you can see, I always like to brag about my greatest accomplishments. Of course, attending VCU, where I was a ROTC person, which I had a full scholarship and led me to the Army, of which I served for 6 years on active duty as a logistics officer, getting out in the year 2000 as a captain, and subsequently then taking that onward to my career, as you see there, that I embarked on in 2000. And backing up, of course, I'd be remiss not to mention my family, of which I met my wife on active duty. So she too was a spouse for a short period of time. But again, I've always stayed connected, and we as well have created my greatest accomplishment, of course, is my family, as you see there. As far as my career journey back here, I started out in the Army from 94 to 2000, of which I got off active duty. As a junior military officer, you get the unique opportunity to interview at a multitude of companies, of which I decided I would venture out and do a small sales job in pharmaceuticals for a while. I started off with the Carrier Corporation. Wasn't necessarily the field for me, but and like Joe, I had a stint with some pharmaceutical work at Abbott. And then ultimately, I found my way to Ethicon in 2005, where I began a sales career in medical device sales, specifically devices that were utilized in surgery to help with hemostasis, which is blood control. Very unique opportunity to get exposed to the wide variety of products and services that we offer here at J&J and the impact we have on patients in surgery. And it just really expanded my commitment, not only to wanting to be a great medical device person, but really to be a part of this organization, what we were about, which is patients and making them better. Although that was the case, I was led away for a short period of time, approximately 14 years. And you can see the variety of different opportunities I've had. I'd be remiss not to say that much of the success I've had there was predicated off the opportunities I've had here at J&J, which was ultimately a year ago, October 1st, as of 2022, I came home, as I like to say, back to J&J in this capacity. Who knew, right? You never know what your future holds. But as I reflect back on all those opportunities you see between 2008 to 2022 when I returned, it uniquely prepared me for this opportunity to be here. And so I'm excited to be back. Excited to answer your questions, and thank you again for the opportunity to address this group. And yes, I used to jump out of perfectly good aircraft and fired every weapon known to manhood. So you never get that out of you. So it's nothing like a bunch of military guys and gals around sharing good times.
Thanks, Erin. So what I love about this is it sounds like we heard some really diverse backgrounds, as I mentioned. There's no one right pathway from the military into one clear job unless you want to do exactly what you did in the military. So thank you so much for sharing your stories, team. And please, if you have questions for them, we're going to get to those questions in just a couple of minutes or just a few minutes. But I do want to spend some time going over some general information about how we hire. So if the company culture sounds good to you, if some of the things that our folks talked about sound good to you, where do I get started? Well, we do have 4 dedicated military hiring tracks for veterans at Johnson & Johnson. We also are committed to hiring military spouses if they're not in specific roles, but across all of the ways that we hire. But one thing that I want to point out before I get into talking about the specifics of each of these programs is these are not the only ways to get hired. You know, one of the best ways to get hired is to look at our open jobs at Johnson & Johnson, to sign up to get updates about roles that are open. I will talk more about that in a moment, but I want you to be thinking about these as all a variety of front doors into our business if one could be the right fit for you. So if we could go to the next slide, I'll start explaining those. But please do bookmark careers.jnj.com and careers.jnj.com/military. What we said is interesting to you. You'll find a lot of this information there, especially on that military site. You're going to find about information about each of these programs, as well as a tool to help you to job search if you're not sure where to get started with us on that side as well. But all right, our Skillbridge program. I don't know if we have any active duty service members on the line, but if you do, we are a Skillbridge program provider. One thing to note about our Skillbridge is we do only offer it at our hub, our major site locations. So those are listed on the screen. It doesn't mean that we don't hire at J&J across the country. We do. We hire field-based roles, sales roles. We have some other small offices. But the reason why we look at Skillbridge this way is we consider it an intern hire pathway. We only bring people into Skillbridge opportunities where we have a strong anticipation that there is a full-time job on the other side of that if it all goes well. And the ability to project jobs and know that some, have a really high likelihood that something's going to be available does require us to focus on sites where we hire at volume, and we know we hire regularly. So that's why we made that decision and why that's firm. But if that is interesting to you, I recommend you consider applying about 9 to 12 months prior to separation. Of course, at least 6 months, because that's when your Skillbridge window opens. We are there typically at least 90 days. I actually say 84 because we will do 11 weeks, but we aim for 90 days or more on that internship of whatever you're approved for. And the way to find out more, so here's the deal, is just write down that inbox. Juliet November Juliet, I still speak Army ATC, but Juliet November Juliet, Skillbridge at its.jnj.com. If you send an email, you'll get an auto response with this information, FAQs, and the exact steps of how to apply to our program. What happens once you apply is you get added to a list based on the preferences that you shared, the location options that you listed, and we start sharing your information with about 200 hiring managers across our company to look at you against their upcoming roles in their company. I will give one caveat to this before I move on to the next program. We do not typically offer Skillbridge for sales roles. That exception we've made that exception in very unique cases, but the reason why it doesn't usually work for sales, and we recommend if you're interested in sales, which is a phenomenal career, that you wait and start applying to full-time roles. The reason is, well, a number of reasons, but typically our sales roles require at least a 6-month continuous training period, and they start on specific dates, and that doesn't usually align well for Skillbridge. But you can email me at that address. It is me you will reach at that email address. So if you do have questions about that we don't get to today, please do feel free to email there. Next slide. All right, and then we talked about our Janssen Veterans Sales Pathway that Joe was our first person to come through. This is one of the great ways to break into a career field in sales. One of the things that we found was veterans are thriving in sales, but sometimes we're having a hard time getting in. And so we took a handful of roles each year and created roles where we said, instead of industry experience, let's say this requires military experience. And we bring about 12 people a year in through this program, where for typically about a year, it's not a set, this one is not a set time frame. You work in a territory with experienced representatives, really learn space. You do start contributing, but you're also really learning, getting grounded, getting your feet wet, and then just like Joe, the goal is for you to move into taking on your own territory. You are a full-time employee that whole time. This does require a minimum of a bachelor's degree and at least 2 years of military service. They're also looking for folks who transitioned out in the last few years as well. So if you've been out for 10, 20 years, we're probably going to direct you to apply to full-time roles. But this is for those who've recently transitioned to break into sales. Now, what does this mean? So 10 to 12 roles a year, and they get posted for specific locations where there is a need or there is an opportunity. So it could be any city across the country. These roles change and they update regularly. You can check for those available roles on our website and sign up, set preferences to be notified when they open. This is not the only way to get hired into sales, though. Actually, several of our sales hiring programs, both in med tech as well as in pharmaceutical, or innovative medicine, it really look at veterans as they apply to their programs. Our ACAS program, that's one of them. There are a lot of associate sales programs. So I would say look at these roles, but also look at other sales opportunities and military spouses as well. We've had a lot of spouses who have thrived in sales roles. So encourage you to look at this program, but also encourage you to look at sales roles more broadly. Next slide. Hey, Abraham, we're going to reserve time for questions at the end. At about 1:40, we're going to transition to questions at that time. So please raise your hand again then. All right, we have 2 leadership development tracks. One is called MVLDP, which is this slide, and in a moment I'll show you our other, which is EMVLDP, our Experienced Military Leadership Development Program. You might have heard of these. These are incredibly popular, phenomenal programs that have a really good track record at J&J, for bringing recently transitioned service members into get a leadership experience across our company and then determine where they're going to land in their full-time permanent role at the end of that. So for this program, the MVLDP program, you do come in as a full-time employee. What I will say about both of these programs, though, and I want to make this really clear, they are incredibly competitive. We get a couple of hundred applicants each. We take about 6, sometimes 8 into MVLDP per year, and we take 4 into EMVLDP. I do want you to know that they are highly competitive programs, but they are amazing programs. So they are, please, if this excites you, what I'm about to share, please apply or consider looking into these programs, but please don't look at that as the only way to get hired in our company, because sometimes people get really excited and they think that's the only way. Phenomenal program. So MVLDP, what is this for? It's for mid-career exceptional military leaders, both enlisted and officer. You have to have served at least 4 years in the military and have a bachelor's degree, but you can be enlisted or officer, have some experience as a people leader, and again, just be top talent. This program does require you to move to the New Jersey area if you're not there. The idea is you need to experience different areas of our business, and the pharmaceutical and med tech industry in this country is headquartered in New Jersey. So we've got 8 major offices in New Jersey, Pennsylvania. That is why it's important that this program, you're willing to be in that area. But we have had people move for their last rotation or off program to another city. That is worth noting. If you're interested in MVLDP, email the email address on your screen, mvldp@its.jnj.com. And they are hosting, I would email them today because they can let you know they're starting to host information sessions next week. The application will open in January for a July start. It recruits 1 time per year. So you're in the right time to learn about that program now. Next slide. Okay, so our EMVLDP program is specifically for senior military leaders, E8 or O5 plus, and 20 years of experience. It does have to be both. If it is less than that, then you apply to the other program. But O5, E8 plus, you come in at a director level in our business, which is actually very senior. We typically will not hire people from outside of the industry at that level of a role. And this is an opportunity to come in. But you do spend 18 months doing 2 leadership rotations at that level, and then work to move into a full-time permanent role. If you didn't get either of these email addresses, the one thing, if you can commit it to memory, careers.jnj.com/mvldp, military. You will find these flyers, you will find these email addresses listed on that website if you don't get them today, but is worth noting, same email address, mvldp@its.jnj.com. Next slide. Okay, but then this is what I always anchor back on, is remember that we hire, the way that we hire the majority of veterans and military spouses that come into our business is through what's called direct hire, meaning you apply to full-time roles across our business. If you would go to the next slide. There's some keywords we recommend using. I know that I'll go ahead and address one of the questions now because I think we're actually doing really good on time. That I saw something pop through about remote work. I'll be fully transparent about that, and I'm okay to do that. Here is, we are not a company that's leaning heavily into remote work. We don't have a volume of remote jobs available, but we do hire some remote roles. And there are some pockets of roles. And by the way, the military spouse or the person who's curious for military spouses, we are working on a strategy next year to really communicate some of those pockets of opportunities out to our spouse community. But the best way to find them is to use the keyword remote and look at those job descriptions and then just narrow it for the US. Do the US, look at remote. We always do have some jobs that are open remotely. Though again, we are not a company where that's the majority of our jobs. The majority of our jobs are flex, do require you to be in an office 2 or 3 days a week, or I always give the example of manufacturing. You can't do that from home, right? You got to do that. You can't make a contact lens in your living room, at least I can't. That does require being full-time in the office. Okay, let's go one more. We have one more slide. And that is just, I highly encourage you, if you do nothing else, and you're interested in a job at J&J, I would highly encourage you to go to our Johnson & Johnson career site and set up a profile on our Talent Hub. By setting up a profile on our Talent Hub, it really takes a lot of work away from you in that you can set up preferences to be notified of jobs that match your interests as soon as they get posted, or actually, usually I get an email. I encourage all J&J employees, if you haven't, to sign up for this, because I typically get an email about 4 hours before the posting goes live. It confused me at first when I joined J&J, said click on it and I couldn't find the posting. I actually get the email usually about 4 hours before the job even goes live saying, hey, we see there's a job coming open that matches your interests. And so especially if you're in an area, this is especially true if you're in a geographic area that's not near one of our major sites. Rather than having to go back and research that all the time, you can set up a profile and receive an email when a job opens in your area or in your market. So highly encourage you to do that. But okay, I did buzz through that. Hopefully that's good news for you all, because I think that means that we can come back to the IBMF team and start and stop the recording and start taking your questions and making this a bit more conversational. So thanks.